Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but also the Locked On Giants podcast. I am one of your hosts, Javier Reyes. You might be familiar with my baseball-related work over at Just Baseball, where you can see me writing about not just the Padres, but general baseball, and also my new podcast, Baseball versus the World, which is about all the fun stuff of baseball culture. And I'm being joined by the immaculate, the uncanny, the astonishing man of numbers and Giants wisdom. It is Ben Kaspick, host of the Locked On Giants podcast. Sir, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Can't wait. 2 days. Well, this episode
Yeah.
is opening day. For me, it's probably going to come out on Tuesday. So, yeah, there goes the facade that maybe. Anyway, I'm excited. The opening day is near, and I'm excited.
Yeah, me too, man. It's finally talking about like current games that will happen. You know what I mean? We've been waiting all off season for this. It was a long off season, especially because on top of the fact that it was a weak free agent class and it took so long for a lot of guys to sign, and we still have guys yet to sign. Blake Snell only signed recently. We're going to talk about that, of course, but you still got Jordan Montgomery and Tommy Pham out there. And also, huge come down from the past few years, which has seen genuinely like a splash of free agents, not just for like my team, but for even your team technically, with the Correa ordeal, with the Judge ordeal, with the crazy trade deadline from a few years ago when the Giants got Chris Bryant, when the Padres got, not Max Scherzer, unfortunately, but even still, like it's quite a come down for what has been usually a busy period for baseball these past few years. But now, man, we're kicking things off. By the time you're listening to it for my feed, it's opening day. For Ben's, you're 2 or a day beforehand, whatever. But Padres, Giants, 4-game set to start things off. The two teams that outside of the Dodgers made some of the biggest moves across the entire league. The Padres, of course, dumping Juan Soto off to the Yankees for spare parts. I'm just kidding. They also acquired Michael King in the trade and some prospects. And they also acquired Dylan Cease, some depth pieces in Randy Vasquez, Johnny Brito, et cetera, et cetera. Yuki Matsu is a big signing. And the Giants, which is a team that for some reason there is a dumb narrative. I mean, I know why the narrative exists. I believe me. But there's been a whole thing about, they can't sign free agents. And it's not exactly true. Outside the Dodgers, they are the team that has by far spent the most this offseason on free agents. So both of these teams, big moves all the way around, man. And we're starting things off. Like, what are you looking forward to the most, I guess?
Well, like you said, I mean, the Giants, they didn't get that Aaron Judge type player. They didn't sign Shohei Ohtani. They didn't sign Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I think those were their top 2 targets. Mm-hmm. Both went to the division, not just division rival, but the Giants' obviously biggest rival in LA. And yet, I would still say the Giants easily had an offseason that you would grade kind of objectively. Of course, grading the offseason is a fool's errand, as Padres fans know all too well.
Oh, believe me, yes.
But easily an A, from my perspective and from a lot of people's perspective, because they made a lot of moves, including 3 moves once spring training started, with Jorge Soler, followed by Matt Chapman on a well below market expectation deal. Mm-hmm. And then Blake Snell, same thing. 2 years for Blake Snell. I mean, people were expecting this guy to get, 150, $200 million, and he gets, 62 over 2 years with an opt-out. And Matt Chapman, so there's like been a roster overhaul. They signed Jung Hoo Lee way early in the offseason. Jordan Hicks, who's going to pitch in this opening series as a starter. That's a really interesting storyline. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like interesting crossovers from these two teams. Bob Melvin is now the manager. Gabe Kapler is out. And, they kind of shot themselves in the foot a couple times with some PR stuff over the offseason. However, I would say just in general, this is probably easily the best team that they've had going into a season since I've been hosting the show. And this is I've been hosting for 5 years. So I guess that means 5. Does that mean 5 or does that mean 6? 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. This is the 6th season we're entering that I've been hosting. So I think other than some of the negative PR stuff, the vibes are good. And I think there's good reason for it because the team looks like they look like one of the top wild card contenders in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, huge offseason. And Jung Hoo Lee was, you guys were looking for Yamamoto and then Shohei Ohtani, a lot of rumors back and forth. Um, that's been kind of the storyline with the Giants in a lot of ways, is the ever elusive big boy free agent. But
Yeah.
with the Padres, they also did have their own miss. They reportedly were very frustrated. They had wanted Jung Hoo Lee for themselves, which shows you that the rumor that the Padres are, or not even the rumor, but just this idea that the Padres are going back to the Stone Ages and are going to be a small budget team again, seems to not be true. But it is true that the team had to, step back, at least for this season. I've talked about it on my show, collective bargaining tax, all that stuff, trying to get below that. And still 200 million is plenty if that's your overall amount of money that you're willing to spend. Free agent class is stacked next year, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, both of these teams, a lot of moves. And we even mentioned the Robbie Ray trade, right? Like that was a big deal. While it won't be relevant for this particular series and it won't be relevant for much of the first half of the season, Giants just did so much. And it feels like they are a team that, unlike the Padres, we've talked about, just completely different. The Giants have had this ability to accrue the good B-level players, depth, all that stuff, finding players that you didn't know would be okay, like Tyro Estrada, like to an extent, Mike Yastrzemski, some of the bullpen guys. Camilo Duvall has stepped up and been a really good closer. They've had Anthony DeSclafani pitch really solid innings for them and be better at times than some starters for the Padres that have bigger names. But then they've missed out on the big stars, while the Padres have gotten all the big stars in the world, made all the flashy moves, but haven't been so great with depth. And that's going to be the big question with the Padres, especially with this series, is what's the lineup going to look like? How much are prospects Jackson Merrill and Graham Pauley going to play? Merrill, probably a lot. Seems like he's a starting center fielder for the team at the moment. Graham Pauley, unknown. Is it going to be Eggy Rosario? Is it going to be Tyler Wade? There's so many questions around those tertiary pieces for the Padres. They have been linked to Tommy Pham, your boy, but they have not made that signing yet, which is weird at the time of this recording. I thought that it would actually happen. I really did, like after the Soul series, but it has not. And that's the other thing. The Padres have at least played 2 games while the Giants had, so I'm curious to see how that pans out. But this is going to be fun. I think that the Giants are a team that I've just given up trying to predict. This is one of those. I think them and the Rays much more so, though. Rays is like, I don't care what the Yankees did. I don't care what is on the Orioles. I will never, ever trust when it says, oh, yeah, the Rays will win like 85 games. Never trust that they're going to win the division this year. The Giants have a little bit of that aura, though, where, yeah, they've struggled to make the playoffs some years, but they find talent. They find ways to win ball games. The random 140 win season that they had a few years ago that still to this day nobody can explain. Definitely not a team to be underestimated, even if the star power on the Padres currently is a lot better. This is, I mean, we've talked about it. Do you want to just get into it? Could both of these teams, along with the Dodgers, make the playoffs?
They definitely could. I think that there are 2 excellent teams in the National League on paper, in the Braves and the Dodgers. And outside of that, there are a few really bad teams in the Rockies and the Nationals. Maybe throw the Pirates into that mix as well. And outside of that, there is a lot of parity. Like you could make an argument to me that any of the other teams, and baseball is a crazy sport. Maybe even one of probably not the Rockies or the Nationals, but pretty much any one. What is that, like 11 teams, like and 3 of them make the playoffs? Like, you could make a case. That's why I think the Giants making these late moves to put themselves maybe at the front of the pack of this huge group that's like bunched together in the projected win total range of like 80 to 85. Like, there's like 10 teams in the league, in the National League, that are like kind of in that window, and the Padres are one of them, and so are the Giants. But I don't know. I mean, I think the Padres obviously got worse. I think that's fair to say, right? In the offseason, that you give up Juan Soto, it's hard to like also get better in the process. Whereas the Giants, I think, got a lot better. And last year, I know the Padres were I'm ultimately saying it was just an unlucky, fluky kind of year with them
Mhm.
last year. And so if some of that kind of luck and extra inning and one run stuff comes back to normalcy, even if
Mhm.
you take away Juan Soto, I think they could still be a good team.
Mhm.
Whereas the Giants, I think they made enough improvements where they won 79 games last year, which is not that good, but you add a bunch of talent, and I think you're looking at easily a team that could win mid 80s or more. And I feel like the Padres are in that same boat. And so I was just talking with Millard from Locked On D-backs, and I think it's the
Mhm.
same story. It
Yeah.
was basically the same thing. And then he said he was talking to you, and it was kind of the
Yeah.
same thing. And so I feel like it's just a big melee, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be a wild, potentially a wild. Who knows? Maybe we have like a 11-way tie for the wild card spots at the end of the year.
Yeah, this isosceles triangle of death, dare I say love triangle even, occasionally with these three teams. Because honestly, I feel like there's not a lot of beef between our three teams. We got plenty of that for
Yeah.
the one above us. But guys, before we continue talking about not just some more storylines for the series, but also some predictions, some pitcher matchups, all that stuff, I want to take a second to talk to you about something that will help you get to go to these games in the first place. It's called Game Time. It is a fantastic application that takes away all the hassle of buying tickets because they've also got some really cool deals for you as part of it, guys. That's right. You've got last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. It's easy to find them for all sorts of events, by the way, not just baseball and not just sports, comedy, theater, all sorts of things that they've got. I love saying theater like that. All sorts of things. Lowest prices guaranteed, event loss cancellation protections, job loss protections. They've got you covered big time. It's really cool. You just go on the app. They've got like little lightning bolts that'll pop up for some big deals. So always check in. And one thing I really like, speaking of last minute deals, the game time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section in a row for less, game time will credit you for 110% of the difference. So they got you covered. Don't worry if something comes free. They got you covered with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account and redeem code Locked On. You clicked on the Locked On Padres and Giants podcast. You know how to spell it. Locked On for $20 off. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed with Game Time. Mm. And just like that, we are back here on the Locked On Padres Giants opening day, opening week crossover. We're finally back, man. And I think we really summed up both of our teams pretty well. I think that with the Giants, there's a lot more questions about like how some players will fit. I mean, one of the storylines that you brought up rightfully last year, you were right, was just in general, a lot of shakeup, a lot of players playing different positions. It actually ended up working out. And I think that it's interesting that you bring up, was last year just, kind of unlucky. I do think it was unlucky. However, I would point to the fact that the Padres have had this issue of a really strong core that underperforms every other year. They're a very every other year team. And to me, that could speak to more than just luck. Although I do agree with you. I think it went a little bit too much in one direction. So I think that they're going to bounce back this year. But man, I mean, just the vibes at Petco are going to be fascinating to see. I think this is going to be one of those teams and the Giants that I really want to see also if the late signing is a thing. This has been something that I've been poking into just a tiny bit, which is just, is Blake Snell going to struggle out of the gate? Is Matt Chapman going to struggle out of the gate? I don't think it's going to be a giant, no pun intended, sort of impact, but they signed late. And I do wonder what there is to be said with your point last year about so many players playing different positions at the Padres. Tatis went to right field, Cronenworth to first base, Ha-Seong Kim to shortstop. There were so many questions, right? Juan Soto from right field to left field. That one certainly didn't work out defensively. But the Giants have a similar vibe where it's not different positions, but a lot of different players, new personalities on the team, coupled with the fact that Chapman and Snell, especially Snell, signed late and maybe weren't as acclimated with the team. Do you think that that's something that is going to be worth monitoring, do you think?
I think it could be with Snell. I feel like
Mhm.
Chapman's been around. Like he's been out there almost every day in spring
Mhm.
and very familiar with the Bay Area, playing for the A's, right across the bay for all those years. Very familiar with Bob Melvin, his former manager with the A's for so many years. So I think there's a comfort level with Chapman, and he's played a lot, in spring. I don't remember how many weeks ago exactly it was, but it was at least like
Yeah.
maybe 4 weeks, 3.5, 4 weeks ago that
Mhm.
that he signed. So I think that he should be all right, like right out of the gates.
Mhm.
But with Snell, I mean, he's not ready, and so that's definitely a factor. Like he's going to pitch in Arizona on
Mhm.
Friday, along with I think Alex Cobb and another player, Keaton Wynn, young player who was kind of projected into this rotation, but had like a little bit of an elbow thing early in camp. And so, yeah, with Snell, I mean, I know like last year he started out really poorly and then went on this unfathomably good run to
Yeah.
finish out the season. And so I know he can be a little bit up and down. And so, yeah, it's definitely a possibility that he but he struggled out of the gates last year too. So it's almost like,
Yeah.
well, maybe it has nothing to do with coming
Mhm.
in late or not. But there is pressure on him, like from his
Mhm.
perspective, because this wasn't the contract that he wanted. I'm sure he wanted something longer term, more guaranteed money. Like I said,
Mhm.
like 150, 200 million, I think is what they were looking for, somewhere in that range. And to get only 262 with the opt out, I think there's the hope is from his perspective that he pitches great and opts out and then is able to kind of say to teams, look, I put together 2 excellent seasons in a row. I've had a great career. I've won 2 Cy Young awards and I deserve a bigger contract. And so maybe that pressure in general also sometimes it can help players, sometimes it can
Mhm.
hurt players. So I really don't know. Like,
Mhm.
Snell better than I do. I've seen him pitch from afar, but he's never been on my team, but he seems like a really relaxed and chill guy from kind of the
Yeah.
interviews I've seen. So, maybe he's mentally better equipped to handle it than others. And again, he pitched for Bob Melvin the last couple
Yeah.
seasons, so I feel like that probably helps with comfort and familiarity.
Mhm.
But I think Chapman should be fine. But he's also a streaky player. I think
Yeah.
definitely. So
Second half of last year, especially,
it was
was
horrible.
was really bad. His hard hit stuff was through the roof that first half, and everyone was talking about him, including me on my show, where I was like, do the Padres not extend Machado because Matt Chapman, maybe you get him for less the next year if you want to extend
Mhm.
Soto, et cetera, et cetera. It was just an idea. Nobody yell at me. But Matt Chapman, that is a storyline to follow. In general, this whole lineup is something to follow because I have been again, I've said it a lot. I think that there's just nonstop underrated players. The question is, at one point, do you need like the star player? And I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen fully with this lineup. Frankly, I think Jung Hoo Lee is a 4.5 win player immediately. I've been bullish on this for a while. I think he's a 120 WRC plus guy that's going to play really good defense, similar to Stephen Kwan of the Guardians. I know that that's a little bit of a lazy comparison for a lot of reasons that we don't have to get into, but I really do feel it. The bat to ball stuff is through the roof, and I don't know. I've said this before on this show, but Ben, I'm going to give you a comparison for just a second. I've been getting some like Jalen Brunson vibes with this signing. I know
I
you're
don't.
not much of an NBA
I
guy,
was like, who
so
is that?
I'm gonna walk it through.
Okay.
Jalen Brunson has been the star of the New York Knicks and has resurrected that team. And originally, when he signed, everyone was like, "Good player. I'm excited for him, but wow, that's an overpay." Jung Ho Lee kind of had that same vibe where everyone was like, "Whoa, I mean, we like him, but KPO guy has never played in Major League Baseball like for 150 million." And then what ends up happening is, in the state of Jalen Brunson, immediate superstar. It's like, yeah, we don't care if it's an overpay. And also, it was the star they'd been looking for a while, especially at the point guard position. Giants, you see where I'm getting here? They've needed a star level player for a long time, and everyone views it as an overpay. And I think by the end of the season, one of my bold predictions is it will be looked at as an underpay. That's how high I am on this guy. In terms of the Padres center fielder, that's probably the biggest thing that people want to keep an eye out for this series is Jackson Merrill. How does he look in center field? He didn't have too many balls hit his way in the Dodgers series, so I'm curious to see how that pans out because this is a guy who originally was a shortstop. Now, shortstops, and I think that we've seen teams like to draft a lot of shortstops because that's the position that they think if they need to move them is the position that is the most athletic, etc. Let's just look at Tatis. But with the Padres, man, I mean, I think that this is going to be such a funny series for overreactions for both teams. Every series is always fun for that, but Padres coming off a disappointment and Giants signing so many guys, both fan bases say the Padres get killed. They're going to be like, all right, 2023 all over again. If the Giants get killed, it's like, wow, all that money and we couldn't even beat the Padres, right? Right?
Yeah.
I think that this is ripe for overreaction with the divisional race and stuff. And we're going to talk about it. I'm going to let you ask me some questions because I've been talking quite a lot. But we're going to do that, and we're going to go over some of the pitching matchups, guys. But first, I want to give a shout out to something else that has to do with matchups, in fact. Specific matchups. It's you versus the numbers, ladies and gentlemen, with PrizePicks. It is fantastic. Go check it out. It is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. Like I said, just you against the numbers. You don't have to worry about all the thousands of, other players, pros, gambling sharks, all that sort of stuff. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Just because football's over, it doesn't matter. We got baseball rolling in, and that's new players and possibilities, hundreds of possibilities every day. They even offer injury assurance so that your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. And also, if you want to play like against some celebrities on there, they've got Meek Mill on there, Sugar Sean O'Malley, and you can find them under the Community Plays tab in the app. So look at that, guys. Again, this is really good over at PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. $100, guys. That's LOCKEDONMLB. Download the promo code. Hold on. Download the app. Use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. LOCKEDONMLB. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. Final segment. What up, everybody? We're back. Locked On Padres and Locked On Giants. Ben, what do you think? What are your questions about the Padres before we break down the pitching matchups?
There's a lot of questions. There's more questions than even last year, and like
There's a lot. Yeah.
I mean, this team. I don't want to say it became even more in my. I mean, first of all, they didn't. We talked early in the offseason about Ha-Sung Kim as a trade candidate. Well, actually, they did do something there, right? They said, okay, actually, Kim, you're going to play short. So they moved Bogarts to second. Mm-hmm. But I still think you're wasting Cronenworth's value by playing him at first. And so maybe your thoughts on that, although we've covered that before. And then just what do you make of this team? Like, do you think that this is a hard team to nail down? Because it's I don't want to say a stars and scrubs team at all, because like some of the quote unquote scrubs are like young players with a lot of talent, like Jackson Merrill, as you said. But like, where do you see this team coming in? Do you, like I do, view them as a team that could win, close to 90 games or be under 500? Like, that's kind of how I view them, is that there's this kind of large range of possibilities for them.
Oh yeah.
And also you've got a new manager, Mike Schilt, right? And like, and what's the expectation there? And just general kind of thoughts, I guess.
Just general kind of thoughts. Look, I'll go over the first question in a second, but just in terms of general expectations, you're right. I mean, this is a team that I think has one of the greater variances of almost any team in the sport. You can look at the Twins, you can look at plenty of others, but I think that the Padres, there's basically nothing that would surprise you with this team if they're at the deadline having to trade Ha-Sung Kim, or if they're at the deadline trying to trade for some Bo Bichette. I don't know. Came to mind because the Padres are obsessed with shortstops. So like, I don't know. It could totally happen. And I think with this team, we alluded to, the 1-score games, the fact that they were horrendous with runners in scoring position. Xander Bogaerts hit like 180 last year. His career average with runners on base is 300. So it's stuff like that. Manny Machado wasn't very good. Tatis, while the glove was incredible, he won the Platinum Glove, just in case anyone forgot. He still struggled a bit by his standards with the bat. Still belted a bunch of home runs and stole some bags, but first season back, what's he going to look like this year? And Mike Schilt, look, there's been good reports about the rapport between him and, say, Ruben Niebla, the pitching coach, that it seems like maybe it's possible Schilt might be a better fit. That's nothing against Melvin, but maybe he's a better fit for this team. Maybe Melvin's a better fit for the Giants. It's totally possible. And I think that with this Padres team, with the depth thing, I don't think it's as bad as others think. And I think it's more so this year. And the reason why is because you have to remember that, yes, the Padres had a depth problem last year, but all of their stars, with the exception of Juan Soto, underperformed in a lot of ways. Ha-Seong Kim took a leap, but it's like, if you get that 7 to 8 to 9 win player that Tatis can be because of that defense in right field, if just that one thing happens, the loss of Soto is significantly less. You're going to feel it a lot less if you get that version of him, which we've seen. He's had a WRC plus above 150 every single season of his career, with the exception of last year. Also, Manny Machado, if he steps up, if Bogart steps up, and in my opinion, all they have to do is just not be horrible with driving runners in, especially Bogart's, where all the numbers, except for the ground ball rate, which spiked a little bit, but he busted his wrist, so I'm not freaking out about that. So if that happens, I think the loss of Soto is not going to be crazy. And in regards to depth, there's more unknown this year in a good way. And what I mean by that is we're not saying, oh man, what are the Padres going to do in left field? Instead, it's who are the Padres going to use in left field? Who are they going to use at third base while Machado's out? Because there's guys that we don't know about that have some potential. Eggy Rosario, at the minimum, I think could just be a good glove and be a average hitter, right? I think that's possible. I think Matthew Batten could get called up. I think Jackson Merrill is a big Giant thing, because it's like, look, all you have to do is hit better than Trent Grisham. Like, we're not asking too much on that regard, so that could be a huge plus. Graham Pauley has just been a solid bat guy who could hit like 15 to 20 home runs immediately, potentially, if he gets the playing time. And then also, our catcher was practically just inept last season because he had this like medical issue as well. So you replace that with Luis Campuzano and Kyle Higashioka. That's immediately a plus. And then, you know who they were trying out at DH last year? Matt Carpenter and Nelson Cruz. So those were known quantity guys that you knew. You just have to fill out the roster, right? Well, this year it's, I don't know. One of these guys is probably going to step up. You still got Jurickson Profar, who I would take at DH over Matt Carpenter and Nelson Cruz. That's how bad it was. So
yikes.
The fact that you already know that they've improved with the bottom of that lineup, I think means a lot. And again, to all the people say, oh, they have no depth. Well, what team does when you get to the 7, 8, and 9 hitter? I don't know why everyone's acting like every team has like 120 WRC plus guys at the bottom of their lineup. I don't think that that's true. Every team's going to have some weak points, including even the Giants, right? Like the Giants have some, Yastrzemski has been a little bit up and down every now and then. Like, it's not like he's some super stud. Not everyone's the Dodgers and Braves, right? Like it's just not true. That's not how you should look at your roster. You shouldn't compare yourself to God. You know what I mean? Like, you just can't do that. That's just not what you should be doing. So I just don't think that the depth is that crazy of an issue. Campuzano, all the guys they have at DH. If Tommy Pham ends up getting signed for this team, that's already better. And if the stars perform as usual, and if you get what you can out of the pitching, I think the Padres are going to be in business. Although, again, like you also said, they've had a lot of off seasons that they've looked like the winners. In fact, I'd argue the past 4 years, they've always looked like the team that won the off season, with Bogarts, with the Snell and Darvish trades, with the Mike Clevenger trade, with the Trent Grisham trade, with the Joe Musgrove, everything, and then they underperform. So a lot of variance on this Padres team. And given the locker room drama reports, not this season, but previous seasons, given the turmoil, the micromanaging from AJ Preller, anything can happen, man. But I'm excited. But in terms of this series, not necessarily the whole big picture, opening day, we are expected to get a dynamite matchup between Yu Darvish and Logan Webb. I personally think Logan Webb is in tier 1 for starting pitchers alongside your Spencer Striders, your Garrett Coles, your Kevin Gausmans, your boy, and then maybe potentially, hopefully, for the Padres, Dylan Cease. But I think that he's a tier 1 pitcher, while Darvish is a guy who isn't a tier 1 pitcher, but he can flirt with it every now and then for sure, especially if he's healthy, which has kind of been the whole story of his Padres tenure. Every time he's been bad, it's because it's been health issues. So I'm looking forward to this one. Logan Webb, though, man, he's quite good. He's quite good, and I'm really curious to see how he goes against this Padres lineup, and I'm especially curious to see how the depth guys that I was just alluding to hit off him.
Yeah, and just something to add, two things. Number one is I don't know if it matters or not, but Logan Webb had a terrible, terrible spring. And so even
Yeah,
in his last start, he allowed like 7 runs in like the first inning of the game. And he just got hit hard. And it is spring, and so I do kind of write it off, but like I don't know if the games weren't televised, so I don't know what the velocity was down or what, but that's something to watch, like because he's not like he's coming off a good last start coming into this game on Thursday. Number two, it's a little weird to me that Darvish goes ahead of both Musgrove and Cease.
hmm
And so I think advantage Giants in game one.
hmm
But then when you flip the page to game two and you've got a 22-year-old rookie and Kyle Harrison for the Giants, and I think we said before we started recording it's going to be Musgrove, right, for the Padres. Then that pitching matchup probably goes to Musgrove. I mean,
hmm
Musgrove is very established and
hmm
and just a really good pitcher, whereas Harrison has the potential to go out and strike out 14 in 6 innings. You know, he has
Yeah,
that kind of potential, but he could also walk 7 guys in 2 innings. You know, he has
yeah.
that.
The
It's
rookie
just,
wall, all that
you
stuff.
know,
Yeah.
and he's had command issues, but when he's on, he's on, and when he's
hmm
off, he's off. And then the really interesting, I think you and Miller talked about this because he said it to me that you had talked about it, was the third starter kind of
hmm
being the swing difference. And for them, for the D-backs, they lost Eduardo Rodriguez to the injured list with a lat
Yeah.
strain. And so that's a big deal for that team. Um, Helps our teams, I think, because
hmm
that's a big piece to lose there
Yeah.
before the season starts. But you know, eventually, of course, for the Giants, Snell is going to be that number 2 guy, and but still, I think the number 3, you do have Alex Cobb coming back probably pretty soon. Robbie Ray second half,
hmm
so that rotation could, like I don't know if it was off air or on air, but second half could be dynamite.
Yeah, that's been
Um,
one of my theories about this Giants team. They have, because of the availability and stuff, it's possible that Snell does what he always does, where it takes him some time to ramp up. You get Robbie Ray back. You have more guys just getting familiar and whatnot. Since it's so many free agents coming in, I could even see a world in which I could see Kyle Harrison either being what Mackenzie Gore was for the Padres, which was immediately when he came up, like when he was debuting, really solid starter for them, elevated fastball, all that stuff, and then he kind of got hurt and then fell off a bit, or the Grayson Rodriguez way. Now, Grayson Rodriguez literally was like the top pitching prospect in baseball. Not quite as much for Kyle Harrison, but he's certainly the Giants' top one. Where Grayson Rodriguez struggled last year, and just went and fuego in the second half. So I think that the Giants are one of those teams that
mhm.
could be a second half. There's always one. There's always one team that significantly improves in the second half. Could be the Giants.
And the one wild card, getting back to that number 3
hmm
spot in the rotation, I think is Jordan Hicks,
hmm
because this guy was a reliever for his whole career. He started out as a starter, like in the minors, he was a starter, but he started throwing 100 plus, and the Cardinals just kind of said, you know, we want you in the majors, and so they, instead of like building him along, they just said we're going to make you a reliever, and he never really wanted that role, but it's what he got put in. And so in free agency here, he had the opportunity to seek out teams that were willing to give him the shot to be a starter. The Giants also happened to have targeted him as a guy who they thought could be a starter. So it was like they both agreed that he had potential as a starter. And I mean, it was against the A's. It was an exhibition game, but on Monday night in Oakland, 5 innings, 10 strikeouts, 1 walk, no hits, and
hmm
you know, throwing upper 90s, throws a sweeper, throws now a splitter, which he
hmm
didn't used to throw. And so if Jordan Hicks can be like, and this guy's only 27, by the way, and they signed him to a 4-year deal, and Jung Hoo
Yeah.
Lee is only 25. And so the two guys that they gave kind of longer term deals to this
hmm
offseason are young. I mean, 25 and 27 is young to get free agents in. And if Hicks can like be, you know, like kind of how they found struck gold with Kevin Gosman, for
hmm
example, then that could, just like I guess you and Miller talked about, that could like totally swing things and be a like total X factor is Jordan Hicks for the Giants, and he should be starting that third game.
Yeah, and I think for the Padres, their X factor is, I would argue, it's between Jackson Merrill or Robert Suarez. Robert Suarez, because you lose Josh Hader, are you going to have that anchor for the bullpen? Total retooled bullpen, I'm very high on it, but in fairness, like, we'll have to see how things go. I think Wusatko actually got announced. One of their additions, low-end addition, is going to start out in the minors, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But Yuki Matsui could be the closer for this team. But Suarez, because down year, but when he was on the previous year and he wasn't hurt, low key was like elite, like through gas, was striking out batters left and right. So we'll see if that he returns to that. And then Jackson Merrill, because I mean, it's a big time prospect. He's a top 10 ranked prospect basically by every website. Is he going to be a rookie of the year type guy? Or is he going to be CJ Abrams? No offense to him, who I think is going to have a great year, where he needs more time. You know what I mean? Most guys don't come into the league immediately and are great. So did the Padres promote him because they think, wow, this guy's ready? Or did they promote him because he has huge potential and they need a little bit of help in center field? We'll get that question too. And yeah, Jordan Hicks, maybe he could be the Giants version of Seth Lugo, where last year, that sounds like it's not great, but it's actually okay because Lugo debuted as a starter last year. So similar energy. Now, Hicks, don't get me wrong, much more talented as a reliever. And frankly, I don't care much about the velocity dips with him, only because it's like, well, yeah, because he's pitching for longer. So maybe he's trying to figure out how to like conserve himself a little bit. Maybe he can't throw 105 each inning. He's not a freak.
No,
not everyone can be Shohei Ohtani. You know what I mean? So look, there's just so much that we're going to learn about both these teams these first few weeks. I think it's going to be really important, really interesting to see. I know that for the Padres' sake, that no one's going to trust anything that happens because everyone's going to be like, we could start off great. It's happened in 2021, so we don't know. While the Giants, I feel like there's going to be a feeling of like we want to see the fruits of our labor in the case of the Giants with all the spending they've done kind of show something immediately. Ben, do you have a prediction for this series before we close things out?
I think I kind of tilt towards the split. It's hard to win a series on the road. I do kind of give the edge to the Giants. Well, that's probably a homer thing to say, but because the pitching is not quite. If you had Webb and Snell and Hicks and Cobb or something like that, I would definitely tilt Giants and might say 3 out of 4. But I think I'm gonna guess a split in this series. Yeah.
I'm gonna go close to a sweep in favor of the Padres. As I alluded to earlier, I think this is an overreaction emporium that we're going to get. I think that with Snell not being there, I could just see the headlines. I see them so vividly. Giants, too little, too late. Like things with that nature where they're like, well, yeah, you have Snell, but what use is it if they spent all that money just to get swept by the Padre or whatever. I think that it's going to be that. I think the Padres are high off of the Soul series. I think they're high off the fact that they have a lot of young guys in the clubhouse. Well, the Giants going to take some time. I think that they struggle in this one. Jordan Hicks, Kyle Harrison are the easy ones to go to. Maybe even Logan Webb a little bit, though. I wouldn't be surprised if Logan Webb maybe isn't ace level immediately because I don't think he was ace level immediately last year either. I think he actually started just a tiny bit slow. So I could see that happening. I just think the Padres jump on him. And I think the Padres don't have question marks in the rotation. It's more of just, hey, how good can Cease be? How good can Darvish be? How good can King be? While the Giants, it's like, what is Kyle Harrison? What is Jordan Hicks? What is Blake Snell going to be ready? It feels like a series that is a trap for people to get disappointed if you're a Giants fan. That's just me. It's no hate against the Giants. It literally doesn't matter if they got swept.
Could be.
That's my prediction. I think it's close to a sweep. In favor of the Padres. And yes, feel free to post this audio when inevitably, because it's me, the Giants sweep and the opposite happens and they're low scoring games or whatever. The Padres lose in extras again.
Yeah, all four games.
That would be hilarious. That would be hilarious. The Padres lose 2 of these games in extras, similar to when they lost the back-to-back walk-offs last year. That would be genuinely hilarious. If that
Can't wait to bring it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Regardless, though, everybody, remember, whatever happens, both Ben and I will be recapping the series, giving you all the latest on both Locked On Padres and Locked On Giants. You can check him out at Ben Kaspick, BenKaspick. For me, JAVIIPENO. You know it. Also, go check out Baseball versus the World, my new podcast that just launched. If you want just general fun baseball culture stuff, that's going to be a lot of fun. Excitement, man. Very excited. We've been waiting long enough. I am ready for some dang baseball. Ben, any final words?
As always, no.
I'm sorry. And as always, everybody, stay safe and stay faithful, my Friar Faithful homies, and stay
glorious,
my San Francisco Giants
victorious
friends.
And glorious.
Victorious,
not getting
glorious.
swept.
We'll see everybody until next time. Take care.